So I want you to imagine an army where the vehicles are cobbled together from just literal scrap metal.
Right, just total junk.
Yeah, completely. Like engines that are completely devoid of any functioning internal parts, but somehow these things can break the sound barrier.
It defies all logic.
It really does, and they do it simply because the driver decided to paint the hood red.
Just a coat of red paint.
Exactly. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are going to be unpacking the reality-breaking, just high-octane madness of the orc evil Sunz.
It is such a wild topic.
Oh, it really is. We're going to look at how this specific clan has taken the primal, visceral thrill of going fast and weaponized it. They've turned it into this sort of ontological terror for you to wrap your head around.
It really is a completely different way of looking at warfare.
For sure. I mean, this isn't just about fast cars or like cool battlefield flanking maneuvers. We're looking at a culture that has basically transformed vehicular mayhem into an all-consuming religious calling.
Driven entirely by collective willpower.
And unfiltered adrenaline. Which brings us to our main source for today's deep dive, this really fascinating excerpt titled The Red Tide, A Philosophy of Orcish Speed.
Yeah, that text is just incredible. It forces us to completely reevaluate what actually constitutes a weapon in the 41st millennium.
Right, because normally you think of lasers or bombs.
Exactly. When you look at the broader lore, the most devastating threats are usually, well, they're quantifiable. Like a macro cannon battery on a starship has a very specific yield.
You can put a number on it.
You can. A Tyranid bioacid has a measurable corrosion rate. You can calculate blast radiuses, structural tolerances, all those attrition rates.
So it's all math, essentially.
It is. Military doctrine relies heavily on those immutable laws of physics. You need them to build fortifications and plan defense appareils. But the evil Sunz, they throw all of that right out the airlock.
Just completely ignore it.
They introduce this horrifying variable into the calculus of war.
Yeah.
You are facing an enemy whose capabilities are limited only by their collective imagination.
And their sheer unadulterated enthusiasm,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly that.
That is just the perfect way to frame it. Enthusiasm as an actual weapon of mass destruction.
It's terrifying when you really think about it.
It is. And for anyone tuning in who follows the broader universe, you probably already know that the orcs possess this gestalt psychic field, the WAAAGH energy.
Right, that background hum of collective psychic power.
Yeah, the stuff that lubricates their crude technology. But what we are really unpacking today is the hyper-specific, localized distortion of reality that happens with the evil Sunz.
When an entire subculture focuses all that reality-bending energy on a single obsessive principle.
Yes, the idea that, quote, red ones go faster.
And that phrase is so crucial to understand. It's really tempting to just dismiss red ones go faster as a crude superstition.
Like a quirky cultural placebo or something.
Right. But within the localized field of an evil Sunz warband, it transcends superstition entirely. It's a fundamental functional law of their universe.
Wait, so it literally becomes physics?
It does. The sheer density of their collective belief that red paint equals velocity actually creates a localized distortion in the fabric of reality.
That is just wild to think about.
It really is. The psychic resonance of the WAAGH basically bullies physics into submission. It alters the physical properties of the vehicle and the space around it just to make that belief empirically true.
Let's linger on that mechanism for a second, because honestly, the philosophical implications are just staggering.
They really challenge how we view reality.
Definitely. I've always found it helpful to compare this to the placebo effect in human medicine, but pushed to this terrifying physics-breaking extreme.
That's a really good analogy.
Like with humans, if you believe a sugar pill is a powerful stimulant, your brain might actually alter its internal chemistry, right? Your heart rate goes up.
Your belief changes your internal state.
Exactly. But it stops at the boundary of your skin. My belief can't make a rock float.
No, it can't.
But the evil Sunz are taking that internal biological mechanism and projecting it outward onto inanimate matter. It's like me taking a rusted-out, stripped-down chassis of, say, a 1998 minivan.
Okay, a 1998 minivan.
Yeah, and I bolt a metal pipe to the back, I paint the whole thing bright crimson, and simply because my friends and I aggressively believe it's a hypercar, it suddenly generates 1,000 horsepower.
And the extrapolation goes even deeper than spontaneously generating horsepower.
Wait, really? How much deeper?
Well, consider the cascading physical anomalies required for that rusted minivan to actually perform at that level. It isn't just about engine output.
Right, because if I go that fast in a junker, it's going to fall apart.
Exactly. If you are moving a massive, completely unaerodynamic block of scrap metal at extreme velocities, you should instantly be subjected to catastrophic friction
Oh, sure, and wind resistance.
and structural shears and G-forces that would literally turn the crew into liquid.
Mm.
But the reality warping effect of the WAAAGH seems to act as a metaphysical dampener.
So they just don't feel the G-forces.
The universe essentially skips frames or blurs the mathematical equations just to accommodate their ignorance of these limitations.
That is insane. So their greatest strategic asset is their absolute, unwavering lack of comprehension regarding what is physically impossible.
They are essentially protected by their own stupidity.
Protected by stupidity. I love that. But I have to push back a bit here, or at least ask about the limits. How does that actually manifest on a granular level?
What do you mean?
Well, say you have an evil Sunz mech boy, one of their instinctual engineers. He's building a war truck. Does the red paint literally change the thermodynamic properties of the fuel?
Yeah, it's hard to say definitively.
Right, like are the spark plugs firing at an impossible rate, or is it more of a spatial translation issue? Like the vehicle is just suddenly further along the road than it mathematically should be.
It is likely a chaotic amalgamation of all those phenomena at once. You have to remember, the orcs don't conceptualize thermodynamics.
So they don't even know what rules they're breaking.
Precisely. So their psychic field doesn't bother to adjust the math cleanly. An engine block might literally burn hotter without melting the surrounding scrap iron simply because the concept of a melting point is temporarily suspended.
Suspended by the sheer force of their intent.
Yes. The pistons might cycle at a rate that should shatter the crankshaft into powder, but the WAAAGH energy holds the molecular bonds together purely out of narrative necessity.
The narrative being, we are going fast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is a brute force override of reality. I mean, the physical components might not even connect in a way that allows for internal combustion.
Wait, what do you mean? Like the pipes don't even meet?
Right. A fuel line might literally end 6 inches away from the carburetor, but the
Right.
promethium still gets there because the orc operating it implicitly expects it to.
Oh, wow. That makes the reality of facing them on the battlefield so much darker.
It's a logistical nightmare for anyone opposing them.
I mean, just imagine being a seasoned Imperial commander. You've spent decades studying logistics, aerodynamics, and structural engineering.
You know the rules of war.
Right. You've deployed your armored columns and established your kill zones based on the absolute maximum speed a combustion engine of a certain mass can physically achieve.
You've done the math.
Exactly. And then you were looking through your Auspex scanners, and this tide of rusted metal is closing the distance in half the calculated time.
It would be incomprehensible.
Your entire defensive doctrine just collapses in seconds because you are trying to play a tactical game of chess, and your opponent is eating the pieces and claiming victory because they painted their teeth red.
It destabilizes the very foundation of strategic planning. You cannot calculate an intercept trajectory if the target speed is dictated primarily by how excited the driver is.
How excited the driver is. That's so funny, but also terrifying.
It is. You cannot rely on terrain to slow them down either.
What?
Because if their belief in their momentum is strong enough, it allows their crude suspensions to absorb impacts that should completely shatter their axles.
So rocks, ditches, it just doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
You are no longer fighting a conventional military force. You are fighting a localized breakdown of natural law.
Which naturally brings up the question of what kind of society produces this specific brand of localized breakdown,
We have to look at their sociological structure.
Right, because if their collective belief literally fuels their physical reality, we really need to look at how deeply ingrained this obsession with speed is in their daily existence.
It's not just a hobby for them.
No, not at all. When you examine the sociology of the Eagle Sunz, they aren't just soldiers who happen to prefer mechanized infantry tactics. The source material calls them the undisputed speed freaks of the orc species.
And that capitalization is important. Speed freaks.
Yeah, exactly. This isn't a tactical doctrine they adopt for a battle and then put away when they go home. It is a fundamental biological imperative.
Velocity for the Evil Sunz occupies the same foundational tier on their hierarchy of needs as sustenance or respiration.
Like breathing. They need to go fast, like we need to breathe.
Quite literally. Their entire culture, their social strata, their economy, and their daily routines orbit around the pursuit of momentum and the deafening roar of combustion engines.
And the text specifically highlights that they eat, sleep, and fight within the confines of their vehicles, right?
They do. They practically live in the driver's seats of their buggies and battle wagons.
That detail is absolutely wild to me. It really says that for an evil Sunz orc to be without a vehicle, to actually have your boots on the ground, walking is considered a state of profound shame.
You are stripped of your purpose.
Yeah, it's just mind-blowing.
The concept of shame in a society as inherently brutal as the orcs is really fascinating. In most human warrior cultures, shame is intrinsically linked to cowardice.
Right, like failing to protect your kin or running away from a fight.
Exactly. And for the evil Sunz, cowardice is certainly frowned upon, but the ultimate societal taboo is being stationary.
Because to be static is to be dead, culturally speaking.
Yes, a pedestrian orc is a pariah. They are someone who has lost their connection to the pulsating, kinetic heartbeat of the clan.
It reminds me of the most extreme elements of Motorhead culture,
Or those fringe movements of permanent off-grid van life.
Yes, but cranked up to a lethal species-wide mandate. It's an entire civilization of permanent road trippers, except the destination is never a scenic overlook or like a peaceful campsite.
The destination is always a high-speed collision.
Exactly. But practically speaking, I have to ask about the logistics here. How does a civilization function when it never hits the brakes?
It's a logistical paradox.
Right. If walking is shameful, how do they build their settlements? How are they mining resources or forging weapons if they refuse to stand still?
Well, the reality is that their settlements are more akin to massive migrating caravans or sprawling, chaotic scrapyards that only stop when they literally run out of fuel or targets.
So they basically never stop unless they're forced to.
Pretty much. And when they do stop, it is a state of agitated anticipation. Even when stationary engines are kept idling, revving aggressively.
I can just imagine the noise, just constant roaring.
It's deafening. But to address the logistics of repair and construction, you have to look at their mechanical cast, the mech boys. They have adapted entirely to this kinetic lifestyle.
How so? Like, how do you fix a truck while it's moving?
You have to imagine mechanics performing catastrophic engine overhauls and structural welding while hanging off the sides of speeding war trucks.
No way.
Yes, hurtling across a desolate ash waste at 100 miles an hour while a mech boy replaces a suspension coil.
That is just, it's like a high-speed, lethally dangerous pit crew out of a Mad Max fever dream.
Precisely. They don't pull into a garage. The garage is just another vehicle moving slightly slower alongside them.
That's incredible. And wait, consider how this impacts their communication.
Oh, verbal communication is nearly impossible.
Right. Nuanced, quiet debate has to be physically impossible in an environment dominated by the deafening roar of thousands of unsynchronized, unmuffled exhausts.
Their language likely devolves into primal roars and aggressive physical gestures. But more importantly, they use the mechanical language of the engines themselves.
Wait, using the engines to communicate? Like revving as a form of syntax?
Absolutely. The roar of the engine becomes a proxy for the orc's own voice.
That is so bizarre, but it makes total sense.
It broadcasts their presence, their aggression, and their social standing. A deep, guttural idle might convey a looming threat or immense authority.
Like a growl.
Yes. While a high-pitched screaming red line indicates an impending charge or an eagerness to kill.
So the engine is basically an extension of their vocal cords.
Completely.
Yeah.
The louder your exhaust, the more authority you command in the warband. It is a literal manifestation of he who shouts loudest wins.
But translated through the medium of burning promethium, which is that highly volatile starship fuel they use to power these monstrosities, right?
Exactly. Promethium is incredibly dangerous on its own, let alone being used as a communication tool.
So you have a society where the size of your muffler literally determines your political power.
It's crude, but effective for them.
And think about the psychological toll that must take. Imagine being an evil Sunz orc, captured or somehow trapped in a static environment.
Like an imperial dungeon or a fortified bunker.
Yeah, exactly. The withdrawal symptoms wouldn't just be psychological, they would likely be physical. The absence of vibration, the lack of wind shear, the silence, it would drive them completely insane.
The sensory deprivation of being stationary would be pure agony for them.
Because the need for speed is baked into their neurology.
They are pure adrenaline junkies. They are addicted to the sensory overload of the wind, the noise, and the smell of exhaust.
So if you take away the machine, you essentially amputate a part of their soul.
That's a great way to put it. The vehicle is not just a tool or a weapon. It is an inseparable component of their physical identity.
Okay, so we have established this cultural baseline, right? We're looking at a society of adrenaline-addicted cyborg mechanics who view the laws of physics as polite suggestions.
Very polite suggestions that they ignore.
Right. And they are driving these machines powered by the psychic force of their own enthusiasm. So what happens when you take that sociological perpetual motion machine and organize it for war?
That is where things get truly terrifying.
Because when you look at the anatomy of an evil Sunz warband, it's not organized by military rank in any traditional sense. It's organized by kinetic energy.
It is a breathtakingly simple yet brutally effective hierarchy of momentum.
Compare that to human armies.
Well, traditional military structures organized by function, right? You have infantry, artillery, reconnaissance, logistics.
Everyone has a specific job based on their gear.
But the evil Sunz organized by mass and velocity. The entire warband operates as a cascading spectrum of kinetic force.
Okay, let's break down that spectrum because the text goes into some great detail here. Starting at the very tip of the spear, we have the biker boys.
The absolute vanguard.
Right, these are the orcs mounted on heavily modified, spiky, roaring war bikes. They act as the scouts, but they are also explicitly described as the most aggressive and impatient members of the clan.
The biker boys represent the lowest mass, but the highest velocity in the formation.
So they hit first and they hit fast.
Exactly. They are the hyper-agitated leading edge of the WAAAGH. Because their vehicles are lighter, the reality-bending red paint effect likely amplifies their speed even more drastically.
So they are practically a blur.
They are a swarm of chaotic high-speed projectiles. Their primary function isn't necessarily to hold ground, though.
What are they trying to do then?
Their job is to overwhelm the enemy's sensory processing and defensive targeting algorithms.
But hold on, I have a structural question here. If these bikers are naturally the most impatient and aggressive and they are constantly trying to outpace everyone else, how does this not immediately degrade into a disorganized 50-mile-long drag race? Like, if you have thousands of bikers redlining their engines to get to the front, they are going to leave the heavier units hours behind.
That's a logical assumption.
Right. So how is that a coordinated military advance? It sounds less like an army and more like they're literally racing each other to the front lines.
And they are racing each other. That is the brilliance of their chaotic nature.
Wait, really?
Yes. You're looking for a neat, synchronized front line, but the evil Sunz rely on saturation over time. They don't want a single coordinated impact. They want a relentless, escalating wave of trauma.
Okay, so the stringing out is actually part of the plan, or at least the effect.
Exactly, yes. The biker boys string themselves out. But imagine the effect on a defending Imperial Guard regiment.
Okay, put me in the trenches.
First, your perimeter is harassed by this impossibly fast, screaming swarm of bikes. They tear through your razor wire, they strafe your trenches, and they cause widespread panic.
So everyone is scrambling.
Right. You scramble your defensive lines to deal with this localized high-speed threat. You shift your heavy weapons to track these erratic, zooming targets.
And right as you are completely distracted and your formations are pulling apart trying to swat these mechanical mosquitoes, the second wave hits.
Exactly. The war trucks.
The war trucks. Okay, tell me about this next tier.
This is the next tier of the kinetic spectrum. You have medium mass and slightly lower velocity than the bikes, but drastically increased manpower.
These are the transports, right?
Yes, these are essentially heavily armored, open-topped, flatbed trucks roaring into the chaos that the bikers just created.
It's like a high-speed delivery system for pure brutality. The war trucks plow into the disorganized enemy lines, slam on the brakes, or more likely just crash into a barricade and disgorge dozens of heavily armed orc infantry directly into the trenches.
They don't really do parallel parking.
I would assume not. So now the defenders are dealing with high-speed flanking fire from the surviving bikes and brutal close-quarters melee combat from the infantry.
It's a complete overload of threat priorities. And this is where the genius of the kinetic hierarchy culminates.
Because there's more coming.
Oh, much more. Because while the infantry is locking the enemy in place, grinding them down in bloody melee, the hammer finally arrives.
It's a heavy armor.
The battle wagons.
Oh, man. Just the name implies a terrifying amount of mass. Like, these are massive, track-driven behemoths, bristling with heavy artillery, crushing rollers and jagged rams.
They are the sledgehammer to the biker boys' scalpel.
That's a great contrast.
This is the high-mass, high-velocity terminus of the charge.
Yeah.
The battle wagons aren't designed to stop and provide fire support from a distance.
They aren't artillery platforms.
No, they're designed to maintain their momentum at all costs, acting as massive armored bulldozers. They roll straight over the defensive lines, crushing infantry, barricades, and lighter vehicles beneath their treads.
So they just capitalize on the absolute chaos created by the bikes and the trucks.
Exactly. It is a cascading wave of destruction that systematically dismantles the defense through sheer sensory and physical overload.
And we can't forget that this entire time, there is a vertical element to this chaos, too.
The flyboys.
The airborne element is crucial.
You have orcs and dakajets and fighter bombers screaming overhead. And these aircraft are just as terrifying because, again, they are ignoring aerodynamics.
So the WAAAGH applies to the sky as well.
Right. You have these blocky, rivet-covered flying bricks performing maneuvers that would rip the wings off an Imperial fighter, and they're raining down suppressive fire and crude bombs, further adding to the sensory nightmare.
The sensory nightmare is perhaps their most potent, unquantifiable weapon.
How so?
Long before the first shot is even fired, the psychological assault begins. The sheer volume of sound generated by thousands of unsynchronized, poorly maintained internal combustion engines running at maximum capacity. It is a weapon in itself.
Because it's just so loud, it hurts.
It literally vibrates in the chest cavities of the defenders. It drowns out command frequencies. It shatters morale before the physical impact even happens. So really put yourself in the boots of a trench-line defender on some dust-choked hive world. You're manning a heavy bolter. You've done the math. You know the kill zones.
You feel prepared.
Right. But first, you just feel a rhythmic tremor in the ground beneath your boots. Then the horizon line starts to blur with this massive, expanding storm front of brown dust and thick, choking, black promethium smoke.
It looks like a weather anomaly.
And then the sound hits you. A deafening mechanical roar that rattles your teeth, and out of that oily smoke bursts this tidal wave of rusted, red-painted steel, jagged spikes, and screaming green monsters.
Completely ignoring your carefully plotted firing solutions because they're moving impossibly fast.
It would break the sanity of an average soldier before the first orc even reached the trench.
It is the manifestation of a natural disaster, but one with intent. Which brings us to the culmination of this entire spectacle.
The big finish.
When this massive rolling wrecking ball finally reaches the enemy lines, we really have to look at their ultimate tactical goal. We need to discuss the specific phenomenon of the speed WH.
The speedway. It is such a vivid concept. It's when the entire evil Sunz force rolls forward as one unified, reality-bending tide.
And while it looks like pure anarchy, there's a terrifying predatory logic to their tactics.
Really? Because it just sounds like a stampede.
It is a stampede, but they are absolute masters of the high-speed ambush. For instance, they use the environmental destruction they cause as cover.
Oh, like the dust cloud.
Exactly. This is a brilliant instinctual tactical evolution. They weaponize their own horrific environmental footprint. The massive clouds of dust kicked up by thousands of treads and tires, combined with the thick, black exhaust from their poorly tuned engines, it creates a localized smog bank.
Wow, so they literally manufacture a weather system to use as a smokescreen.
Masking their exact numbers and vectors of approach.
That is so smart. An Imperial commander might see the dust cloud approaching from the north, completely unaware that half the biker swarm has already used the smog to flank around to the east and west.
It's a mobile fog of war that they generate themselves.
And driving all of this is their core philosophical tenet, which the source material sums up in this one beautifully blunt orcish phrase. If it ain't fast, it ain't worth crumpin'.
It perfectly encapsulates their worldview.
Right, meaning if the enemy or the target isn't moving at a breakneck pace, the engagement is just boring to them. It lacks the necessary kinetic thrill to hold their attention.
A static target is an insult.
But the detail that truly reframes how we understand their warfare is their ultimate goal at the moment of impact. Because they don't just want to shoot you. The highest pursuit of an evil Sunz orc is the crash.
The crash is the crux of their entire existence. It really requires us to analyze the psychology of kinetic warfare taken to its absolute illogical extreme.
How does it compare to, say, human military strategy?
Well, if you look at human military strategy, or even the strategies of other advanced races like the Tau or the Eldari, the goal is always efficient elimination of the threat.
You want to win without dying.
Exactly. You want to neutralize the enemy while minimizing risk to your own assets. You want clean kills from a distance.
You want the mathematical victory. You want to outrange and outgun the opponent. Ideally, you want to win the war with the push of a button from a command bunker if possible.
That is the goal of a rational military. But the evil Sunz do not care about clean, efficient elimination. They seek profound sensory overload.
They want to feel it.
They want to experience the destruction on a visceral, tactile level. The crash, that moment when millions of pounds of speeding metal plows into a fortified bunker or an enemy tank, is a moment of religious ecstasy for them.
Wow. Religious ecstasy.
They weaponize their own adrenaline and use their vehicles as giant, blunt force melee weapons.
It's treating a 20-ton armored personnel carrier the exact same way a street thug treats a baseball bat.
That's exactly it.
You aren't just using the vehicle to transport troops to the fight. The vehicle is the punch. You are throwing a building-sized block of iron at the enemy at Mach 1.
The sensory reward of metal on bone and exploding vehicles is what they live for.
But I have to push back on the viability of this when they are facing disciplined, highly entrenched enemies. Does this actually work against a heavily fortified Imperial bastion?
It does, surprisingly well.
Or are they just treating war as a suicidal extreme sport?
Yeah.
I mean, is the enemy even an opponent to them, or is the opposing army just the finish line of a galaxy-spanning drag race?
To understand why it actually works, you have to look at how conventional defenses are designed in the first place.
Okay, so like minefields and trenches.
Right. A layered defense, which includes minefields, tank traps, and overlapping fields of fire, relies on a fundamental assumption
Which is...
that the enemy army wants to survive.
Oh, wow.
It relies on the enemy behaving logically, seeking cover, advancing cautiously, and trying to mitigate their casualties.
But the evil Sunz reject that entirely.
The evil Sunz reject the premise of self-preservation entirely.
Because avoiding the minefield would require slowing down.
Precisely. And we already established that slowing down is shameful. So instead of carefully navigating a minefield, an evil Sunz battle wagon will gleefully drive directly into it,
Hoping for what? That they just power through.
hoping the detonation of the mines will actually launch their 20-ton vehicle into the air so they can land directly on top of your command bunker.
That is horrifying.
You cannot anticipate the maneuvers of an enemy that actively desires high-speed, catastrophic collisions. Their absolute willingness to embrace the crash makes them a strategic nightmare.
Because you can't reason with them.
You can't intimidate them either. They shatter conventional tactics not through superior firepower, but through sheer, unadulterated momentum and a terrifying disregard for their own mortality.
It really is the ultimate triumph of the id. They are a culture where every impulsive, intrusive thought about going faster and hitting harder is immediately acted upon and rewarded.
There is no ego or superego holding them back.
None at all. They represent a universe where the laws of physics are just forced to take a back seat to pure, screaming enthusiasm. A society where red paint equals horsepower, where identity is permanently fused with rusted machinery.
And where the highest, most noble pursuit of life is the glorious, devastating, ear-shattering impact of the crash.
They really are a grim reminder to the rest of the galaxy that the most meticulously crafted, mathematically perfect strategy can be instantly undone by a screaming tide of red metal.
They will not stop until the entire universe is nothing more than a smoking, burning racetrack.
It is a phenomenal, terrifying corner of the lore. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, our listener, with a final lingering thought to sort of mull over while you go about your day.
It's a very philosophical takeaway.
It is. We've spent this time exploring the concept of ontological terror. You know, the idea that the most dangerous thing in this universe is a belief so powerful it literally bends reality.
We see how it works for the evil Sunz.
Exactly. Their simple, aggressive, collective certainty that red goes faster literally overrides the physical laws of their universe.
It forces a reflection on the nature of our own human reality. If a localized distortion can be created simply through the absolute density of collective belief, it begs a really fascinating question about our limitations.
Right. Because we navigate our world constrained by what we collectively agree is impossible. We are bound by the laws of thermodynamics, gravity, and biology.
But what if some of those boundaries are merely constructs of our collective disbelief?
Such a wild concept. If a society could somehow focus its collective willpower, its sheer, unwavering certainty, as singularly and purely as the evil Sunz focus on speed, what seemingly impossible barriers could we shatter?
Are we truly held down by gravity, or are we just held down by our collective, unquestioned certainty that gravity cannot be broken?
It is a profound concept. The line between immutable physics and collective psychology might be far more blurred than we are comfortable admitting.
A heavy thought to carry with you.
For sure. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the high-octane madness of the evil Sunz. Keep exploring the lore, keep questioning the boundaries of the world around you, and if you ever hear the unsynchronized roar of 1,000 rusted engines on the horizon, just get out of the way.